Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Carbett, your host, and with me is Mr. Tim Neverett, and we're talking about the announcer for the Dodgers. Yes, that's the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Tim's been doing this for a while. Hey, Tim, how you been, my friend?
Mark, how are you?
I am doing great. I'd hope to have my good buddy Matt Germain with me. He's sent me 2 pages of notes of questions to ask you.
A lot of questions.
Yeah, well, I've thinned it out a bit and I've thrown in a few of my own. So we'll see how it is. But I know he's a big fan of everything that you're doing. So I want to thank you for that. And, one of the things looking at is as far as your own personal history, I mean, you've been broadcasting for over maybe 22 years now from what I've been able to ascertain.
It goes back further than that, actually. The first game I broadcast of professional baseball was 1985. Wow. And I was 19 years old. I was still playing baseball in college at the time. My college season had ended. I went home and I became an intern for a AA team that was in my town. I would get them the lineups and all these things, they'd sit in the booth and observe. And then one day, one of the announcers had to be off because they didn't work full time for the team. They would just come and go.
Right.
And then the younger of the two announcers said to me one day, "Hey, he's not here tonight. You want to do an inning?" And I said, "Sure." So I sat in, did an inning. The next night I did 2 innings. The next night I did 3 innings. And by July 4th, I was doing both ends of a doubleheader by myself. So that's how I started in pro baseball after my freshman year of college.
My gosh, man, if you weren't exhausted after doing a doubleheader like that in your first year, that's something. And that goes to a good question. Matt asked, and he said, what first inspired you to actually pursue a career in sports broadcasting?
Well, I think a lot of it was because, sports was a big thing in my family. My brother was a really good athlete, and I was a young kid always going to his games saying, "Oh, this is cool. I want to do what he does. I want to play." And I did. And I did my own share of playing and had my own set of athletic endeavors that carried me even further than him. So, but at the same time, I thought at one point I was going to get drafted. At the time, you used to have to fill out index cards. Like scouts would give your coach index cards. I mean, we've come a long way with the internet, right? And my coach came up to me and he said, "Here's 2 cards. So we need you to fill these out." One was for the Chicago Cubs and another was for the Montreal Expos.
Oh my gosh.
And every card had the same question on it. And it said, "Would you consider a career in professional baseball? Yes or no?" And, I couldn't check the yes box quickly enough. But the draft came and went, and I figured, I'm like, I'm still 18 years old. I'm like, oh. So I was donezo after that, and I figured, you know what? If I'm going to stay in professional baseball, I think my only way would be as an announcer. And lo and behold, we had a AA team with the Pittsburgh Pirates in my town, and my dad knew somebody at the radio station, and he said, "Hey, can you use an intern?" And went and talked to them, and they brought me on, and I got paid $25 for my first professional game. And my rate's gone up a little bit since, but it was quite a moment when I got my first check to broadcast a game. I'll tell you that.
Wow. Well, that's exciting, man. I know the early beginnings of any of our careers, sometimes as opportunities present themselves, it takes the passion, it takes almost a need to participate. And you had both of those things and opportunity. So I am so glad to hear that and how you were inspired. But to me, I'm looking here, I'm thinking, I'm looking at Tim Neverett and I see he's inspired a few other people himself. I think you've got 3 sons who are involved in sports too. Is that correct?
That is correct. And my oldest is in his 5th year in AAA with the A's. He's been broadcasting baseball for a while. He worked in AA in Birmingham. He worked in Single A for a couple of years down in Bradenton, Florida, in the Florida State League. And he's in Las Vegas. They're all 3 of them are in Las Vegas. In fact, they all 3 share a house. So it's kind of fun. But my middle son works in the sports gaming business. And my youngest son works in the sports event business. And now he's starting to moonlight as a broadcaster. And what's been kind of fun is this is the first year that he started broadcasting. He did some college volleyball because he played volleyball at South Carolina. And my oldest, as well as doing the AAA games, when he can, he does the college games at UNLV because he does football and basketball at UNLV, and they have him do some of the baseball. And then my youngest son this year started to sit in with him and broadcast games with him. So the brothers doing games together. And for me, I'll be in a hotel somewhere and I'll flip it on the computer and I'll listen. It's kind of, I don't know who's having more fun, them or me.
I love it. I mean, that's got to be encouraging to see your own kids, following up in your own footsteps and, and finding success as they're growing in it. So that is ultra cool to me, man. I got to tell you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's been neat. It's been rewarding, mostly because I never pushed them into it. They were coming to the ballpark with me from a very young age. My youngest, recently we shared an anniversary of a game that when I was with the Pirates, it was Take Your Kid to Work Day. Mm-hmm. And I took him out of school and he had a headphone on and he was sitting in between me and my partner, Bob Walk. And, while we broadcast the game, and he got to eat everything he wanted all day. I mean, he was pretty young at the time. And we lost to the Milwaukee Brewers like 20-3. It was just a terrible baseball game. And he thought it was his fault. And he said, I can't come anymore. I said, you can't. It wasn't your fault. But we reminisced about that actually a couple of weeks ago because we ran into that anniversary. It was kind of fun for us.
Well, there's one thing I like when I'm listening to a game, and that's a good, clear voice and a knowledgeable voice. And Tim, you definitely bring that. And I got to tell you, my own personal experience, I think of a young man in Louisville. I think it was the Colonels was the team way back then playing baseball at the fairgrounds. And I would go out there and I would take my little transistor radio, which is about as deep as 5 iPhones now, and hold that to my ear and listen to the radio broadcaster of the game. I could see all this, but to be able to hear somebody who is knowledgeable about every player, give me depth and all that, that was just so enriching. And when I'm looking at some of this, and I'm also thinking, to be able to visually see that, I know you have to transition between radio and television sometimes. What's the biggest difference between calling games on radio versus television?
Well, the biggest difference, I think, is knowing when to step on the brakes and knowing when to step on the gas, right? So there's a lot of differences between TV and radio. And quite honestly, it's been my experience that if you came up in radio and you learned radio first, you have an easier time to transition to television than the other way around.
Right.
There are a number of broadcasters who have been just television guys who've tried to do radio and they struggle with it. They really do. It's not easy to go backwards, and I call it going backwards. But with radio, nothing happens until you say it does, right? There's no graphics. You are the graphics. You have to give the score often because people can't see it. You have to think about it that way. The difference between a routine ground ball to shortstop on radio and TV is night and day. In TV, you can say, Machado hits it you can just say ground ball, Betts, 1 out, right? You can do that for television, right? That's easy. But for radio, you have to say, Machado swings, hits a ground ball, Mookie Betts 2 steps to his glove side left, grabs it, throws sidearm to first, and Freddie stretch, and he's got it, right? Or something like that. So it's much more descriptive. And you have to put the picture in people's heads. You can tell the story by saying, yeah, there was a ground ball to short, Mookie threw him out. Yeah. But what about the rest of it? You know what I mean? When we start a broadcast on radio, I'll start by saying what the uniforms look like. Last night, I said the Marlins are wearing their home whites, trimmed in Caliente red and, Florida blue, right? So in the Dodgers in their traditional road grays, but Los Angeles across the chest because they've got 2 different road uniforms. But you want to describe what they're looking like so people can see it. Television, the picture's right there in living color. You don't have to say anything. TV, you don't have to give the score. TV, you don't have to, acknowledge sometimes when graphics come up with the batting average or OPS or whatever they're throwing up there in the lower third. You don't have to even acknowledge it sometimes because people can see it. So where television is more of I think it's more of an analyst's medium, where the analyst should really shine. And for a play-by-play announcer, you're really a traffic cop. You're kind of, directing traffic. You're getting direction in your ear from the truck anyway. Where radio, you're in charge. if you're going to go somewhere with a conversation, that's where you go.
Yeah.
Because that's what is organic. And with Rick Monday and I, we've known each other a long time, and we spend a lot of time together. So I'll tell you, like 99.99999% of the conversations we have are completely organic and come up during the game.
Wow.
I don't say to him during a break, I just got reminded of you and a Joe DiMaggio story. I'm going to bring that up. I don't even say that to him. I don't have to. We have a natural conversation during the game, and I'll try to set him up with some things every once in a while. He doesn't know what's coming. He has no idea what I'm going to throw to him. So, and I think that makes it better. But television, sometimes things are set up, and you also have to work in a third person, a sideline person. And, so it's a little bit more of a larger team that puts the telecast together. And I think the play-by-play person has a lesser role than they do on radio. And I'm from, I don't know if I'd say old school, but I'd say maybe middle-aged school, where I'm open to new ideas, but I still believe in the old school way of doing radio.
I like that because there's a lot more color you're able to bring to it. And like you said, because pictorially, if we're looking at the screen, it's in front of us already, and it can be a very simple explanation of what's happening. But that's where a lot of times I will turn down the volume. And I love Dwayne Stantz and Brian Anderson when I listen to the race, but I will listen to Andy Fried and Neil Solondz do what they do, from the radio booth, and the interplay, like you're talking about. I love that. If I'm watching, sometimes I'll be listening to Dwayne and Brian Anderson. Brian's a pitcher, and he's going to be able, they're going to slow down a pitch, and they're going to show me exactly how he's holding the ball. So it is a different experience completely. But as far as the richness and conversation, there's no doubt from my experience anyway, is listening to those two guys on the radio. That's it, my friend. And I'll stay out in the freaking car. I pull in the house. I don't come in to watch the game. I'll sit out in the car till at least the end of the inning, or maybe the end of the game sometimes.
Yeah, it's you mentioned Andy and Neil I know very well. Andy I've known a long time, and he and I think, are from the same school. Basically, we agree on a lot of things. I think in terms of philosophy and how you do a game, and of course his former partner, the late Dave Wills, rest his soul, what a great man. He was kind of the same way, and down there in Tampa Bay. But my goal every night is to have people see it on the radio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to create these visuals. You want to create something, fly ball to center field, Pa has got it, 2 outs, right? That's TV. Radio, there's a fly ball hit to center field, backing up as Pa has over to his right, and right in front of the warning track, he squares up and makes the catch. So you try to be just different. It's a different way of doing it all together. And, I've been doing this a long time, and I really, really enjoy it every day. I can't wait to open my score. It sounds corny, but it's true. I can't wait to open my scorebook and start creating the day in my scorebook, filling it out. When my day begins, before I get the lineups, I get them really early. We have a little inside track where I get them way before myself and the other broadcasters, the Dodgers. We get them way ahead of other people. We keep it secret, but it gives us a chance to get to work. And
right.
I mean, the other day, it was last week, for some reason, we got lineups at like 10 minutes to 9 in the morning.
Mm.
And that's when I started working, as soon as I got them, for a 7 o'clock game. And
wow.
I love doing it. I love comparing notes with other broadcasters. I love talking to people. Last night I was on the field. I was talking to, people with the Marlins and some with the Dodgers, obviously, but I had a chance to catch up with our old first base coach, who's now the manager of the Marlins, and Clayton McCullough, and talk to him for a bit. Those things are valuable, because what they tell you, you can relay on air.
Yeah.
Not everything you're going to say, but you're going to try to filter out the things that you can use. And, like I asked him, what's been the most surprising thing about being a major league manager? Like, what have you surprised at that you didn't expect? And he told me what that was. And then I said, knowing Ohtani as well as you do, how do you tell your guys to pitch to Ohtani? And he just went like this. He went, So he said, you can't pitch around him because you're going to put him on. So you got to try to get him out somehow. And they weren't too successful last night either. So, but it's a great thing, and I think that it being part of the game and relaying it to people, you've got to be down on the field, you got to be in the dugout, you got to be in the clubhouse, you got to, excuse me, you have to talk to people in the game, and you build long-standing relationships. And I've got those in the game, fortunately, where every city we go to, there's a bunch of people I know and can talk to, and every year it seems like I meet somebody new. So it's a wonderful game with great people in it, and uh, I never take it for granted. I love what I do, and it's one of those jobs where I can't wait to get to work every day. And then when the off season comes, you're like, okay, I get a little break. But I'm telling you, Mark, about 2 weeks go by, and I'm just itching to go do something again. And I'll start watching baseball. I'll watch Dominican League baseball. I'll watch anything. And I'll watch old games. I'll listen to old games from the year that we had. So it just never stops. I might get a little vacation here and there, but you never stop thinking about it.
Here's the interesting thing. I was curious, on the road, what has been the most unique broadcasting booth or experience that you've had to step into and go, oh my gosh, or oh man, this is great? What is anything unique?
There's some great broadcast booths. There's some others that are okay. I would say any broadcast booth in the major leagues, if you get a chance to sit in it, it's the greatest place you're ever going to be, right? Wrigley Field could use a little more space, but it's still great. You're at Wrigley Field. You're broadcasting a game with the Cubs involved. Yeah. The booth we're in here in Miami right now is actually a really nice one. There's, I'd say any major league booth you can get into is good. A lot of them are different because of size or where they are, and that hasn't been an issue. But I'm trying to think of probably the strangest one I was ever in, or place I had to broadcast from, was many years ago doing high school football. There was a rainout of a football game, so it was a torrential situation where the field was unplayable on a Saturday, and they had to play the game on a Monday afternoon. They couldn't get the stadium they played in, so they had to play at their practice field. And this is in New Hampshire in the fall, and they didn't have a booth. So they drove a bus and parked it behind the bench at the 50-yard line. The top of the school bus is kind of arced a little bit.
Tim.
And they had to put this game on tape delay. So I had a recorder up there. And they said to me, look, we have a contractual obligation with the school to carry this game. You're going to go out there and do it by yourself. And here's the recorder. This is how old it was. Bring the cassettes back with you, and we'll play the game tonight at 7. So sometime during the game, I'm kind of moving around on the top of the bus and whatever, and it's kind of windy and cold. And I didn't realize it, but the recorder started to slide down the arc on the front of the bus and eventually fell off. It landed in a soft spot, I guess, because it didn't break. But I had to climb down from the bus, grab it, make sure it worked, climb back up, and then continue the broadcast. And when I went to the station that night, I said, hey, by the way, from this point to this point, you don't want to air that. You want to edit that out. He said, because the recorder fell off the bus. But that was probably the strangest, oddest place. I've had to, climb up ladders to get into towers and to broadcast events and things like that. Did the Boston Marathon one time from an insurance office building that overlooked the finish line. The windows wouldn't open. I don't know, if you've been around long enough, you've been in some funny places, but you got to go where the action's happening, and that's what I like to do. But I'd say in baseball, I don't know, maybe the worst one I've been in baseball was at the old park in Vancouver. When I was in the Pacific Coast League, AAA, in Vancouver, it was just like a wooden box that had a window that was just a wooden door. Mm-hmm. It had a little latch that you locked and unlocked, a little sliding lock, and you'd have to open that up. And there was a little metal hook, and it would hook the door to the wall to your right. And you look through this, looked like somebody came with a saw and just cut out a square. And you're in this wooden box that was only big enough for you. I mean, you could stretch your arms out side to side, and you couldn't stretch them out all the way. So that was a little different one. But I don't know. Everyone's a challenge. Sometimes that's different. But I think it's, for me, I'm just, thrilled to be in any box, being able to call any game. I've done a lot of hockey too, and I've been in some interesting hockey arenas. This fall, I was up in Calgary. I did the Anaheim Ducks and Calgary Flames, and they have a catwalk that's kind of out almost over the ice. Wow. And as you walk on the catwalk, it shakes a little bit. So that was a little bit. They warned me about that before I went up there. I said, "Okay, no problem." So I, holding onto the railings and walking out there, and then I got in the booth, and it's a great view looking straight down over the ice.
Jeez. I know, was it the lady with Close Call Sports, Lindsay? She plays the organ for the Ducks, and she's not analyzing what's going on out on the field. And she has anyway, pardon me. She has a whole thing where she looks at ejections and criticizes them on YouTube, but it's a lot of fun. Now, this is from Matt, and he wanted to know, how do you approach preparing for a game, especially stepping in for like a national assignment?
Well, if it's a national assignment, you've got to give each side the same amount of preparation and the same amount of same amount of play, I guess. When there's a scoring play or a big play, it's always a big play, no matter who's making it.
Right.
Right. So you have to do things down the middle. I've been fortunate enough. I've done enough national assignments to know how to do it. And I've done, there was a period of time where I was doing a lot of them. But you've got, sometimes, going in, this game might be lopsided, or it might be a good game. If it's going to be kind of an upset, if you're sensing an upset, you do. You kind of lean toward the team because you want to be involved in the story somewhat, where you're telling that story about how this team, who was supposed to get crushed today, is now on the precipice of pulling off a good upset. So you want to, kind of be involved and invested emotionally in that too. But you have to play it pretty evenly on both sides for the most part. When you're not doing a national one, the Dodgers, for instance, the people who are listening and watching, they want to know about the Dodgers.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell them everything about the other team, I don't think. I think you tell them some basic things. You can tell them some, get them educated on who they're playing against. And baseball is a sport where I think, especially on TV, you have the opportunity to do that more because people can see it. You don't have to describe what's happening. You can just say, this guy is, father was a lumberjack and his mother was an Olympic sprinter or whatever. You give more time to tell those stories, I think, on television than on radio in the era of the pitch clock. We used to be able to tell more stories on radio than we can now. Now we really have to sneak them in because of the pitch clock. But I still think, all in all, people, if you broadcast for a team, people want you to get excited for that team. They want to hear more about that team and what's happening, not only generally, but on a daily basis.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing that too about the pitch clock, because, the rules of the game change, and to hear how that impacts you, say, okay, well, the game has been shortened. And I usually say, okay, looking from a very basic look from the stands, or if I'm there, hey, how did concessions do today? They do as well as they did in the past, but certainly looking in the broadcasting booth there with you, Tim, and saying, how am I going to be able to get all this information in when it's turning like that? I love Yandy Diaz with the Rays. Now, before this pitch clock came into place, it was not unusual to see Yandy step out 3 or 4 times, and you'd have all the time in the world to share whatever you wanted to.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And there was a time when we didn't have restrictions on mound visits.
Yeah.
I remember every time going down to St. Louis, Yadier Molina, we knew going in, he's just going to march and wear out a path back and forth between home plate and the mound, because that's what he did. And I still firmly believe the reason we have the mound visit restrictions is because of him. But, I was looking at some numbers the other day, actually. I want to say like 2012, 13 were the longest we've had games. I mean, they were averaging like 315. and they were regularly 3.5.
Wow.
Now they're regularly 2.5 to 240. I think last night was 245, and that's a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah.
We're seeing fewer and fewer and fewer pitch clock violations too, because the players, the pitchers, and the hitters have really gotten with the rules, and it's made a lot of sense. The game does move along a little better.
Yeah.
It's more crisp, and there's less waste of time, and that's, I think, what fans appreciate. I think us as broadcasters, we appreciate it, because now we can call the game and not have to worry about how much. Like, I used to have to keep a separate notepad with fill material, with stories, and I would break them out. And if I didn't use it, like if I used it, I put a check mark. If I didn't use it, I'd say, okay, I haven't used this one in a while, I can use it again. But you used to have to find, especially on radio, you used to have to find a lot of fill time, because we would have 10 to 12 mound visits a game. We would have guys stepping out of the box all the time. We'd have people calling timeout all the time. But the way the game is played now, I really like it. I like some of the rules adjustments that have taken place over the years. And I was on the fence about the extra innings rule for a long time, because I broadcast a number of those 15, 17, 18 inning games in the past, but we will have those in the postseason. But the placed runner, and it's a pet peeve of mine when people call it a ghost runner, because it's not a ghost runner. A ghost runner is what you play wiffle ball with in your backyard. This is Major League Baseball.
Thank you.
It's a placed runner, and we have people on our own staff that do it, and I don't agree with it. I think it's cheapening what it is by calling it something that you used to play with your friends in the backyard with. It's not the same.
Yeah.
This is a professional game and should be treated as such, and it's a placed runner. That's what it's called. That's what we call it on radio. But I'm coming around on that rule for the regular season games, because I haven't seen extra innings games that have gone 10, have gone more than 10 or 11 innings. And, hey, people got to get home.
Amen.
Right? They want to see the end of the game. In Japan, they have ties. Right.
That blows my mind. I mean, the whole concept of a baseball game.
Because the trains stop running at a certain hour and people need to get home. So that's why they have ties after what is it, 10 or 11 innings over there? Jeez. So that's their rule for the regular season. But, I've kind of come around on that one. But most of the time, I think all the things that have happened in the game have really sped it up. They've done a good job with it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I still have mixed feelings about the place runner. I'll tell you that right now. Once I was like, well, this speeds it up. It's okay. And then, of course, there's the sarcasm of calling that position the Manfred man, and just because he came up with this. But
well, he didn't really come up with it, though. I had actually seen it before. It's from softball. Okay, it's called the Olympic tiebreaker, and I actually saw it for the first time in I think it was Athens, at the Athens Olympics, when I was working that. In 2004. Then I saw it in Beijing again in 2008 when I did baseball, softball there. And it was known then as the Olympic tiebreaker. So if the game was tied at the end of 7, they would do that. They would take the person who made the last out and they put them at second base and then play like we play now. This is not a Major League Baseball invention, regardless of what people think. Rob Manfred didn't come up with this. Okay, this was presented to him. Same as the umpires being on microphones.
Yeah.
Okay, because I did an interview with Rob in 2016, I think, in Fort Myers, Florida, in spring training, and I asked him specifically because we needed it then.
Yeah,
we needed the umpires to explain the odd things. I said, look, we don't need safer out, but we need something on some of these odd plays, why a guy gets 2 bases or whatever. So the fans can know, and then the fans at home can know. And he said, we'll never do that. He told me at that time, I probably have the tape somewhere. He said, we'll never do that because we're trying to take away time from the game, not add time to the game. And it hasn't added really any time to the game. It's been really good. The communication between the umpires and the broadcasters and the fans now I don't think it's ever been better. So, Major League Baseball does some things, but they've had the mics or the refs mic'd up in Japan for years before we did here. So not everything is Major League Baseball's idea, and even though they like to take credit for it, maybe
The good ones. The good
yeah,
ones.
yeah. The placed runner deal that was not Major League Baseball's original idea. That started with the Olympics.
Look at some of these things and the changes, and I know Matt was asking me too. He's saying, in an attempt, he said to keep, I'm reading his question here, in an attempt to keep the game attractive to youth, MLB has made changes to the game. What do you think about the ways young fans consume baseball differently today?
It's a good question. A lot of times people just watch the highlights. There's highlight packages available. I watch them on the phone. There's condensed games that are edited. If you have the MLB app, you can have your favorite team bookmarked and you can go watch the game in, I don't know, 20 minutes. It's all edited up. People will look on their phones to watch the game, to listen to the game. They'll just look at the score. But there's so many more ways to consume it with technology today. The MLB at Bat app, and this is not an ad for the MLB at Bat app, but it's genius.
Yeah.
Okay. It's run by BAM, Baseball Advanced Media out of Boulder, Colorado. And they have done an unbelievable job. It's created an incredible revenue source for Major League Baseball and the ownership. The technology is wonderful. I'll watch the end of games or beginning of games on my phone if I'm on the team bus from the ballpark to the hotel after a game. I might listen. In fact, before we get on, I was listening to last night's game because I listened to every game to make sure that I'm doing it right. So, and I use the At Bat app almost every day. People who are fans also use it quite a bit. And so if you have MLB.TV, if you have a smart TV, like I know my TV in my main living room, I have it on the MLB app because I've got a smart TV. So I'll just click on the app and I'll watch the games there. And it's been remarkable what they've been able to do. The other thing is too, they have a lot of features on there, so you get to know players a little bit better. You got to want to find them. You got to go scroll through. Oh, they got something on Mookie Betts today. Look at that. Mookie Betts has his own podcast, and sometimes they'll run clips from that thing. So I learned something from that the other day that when Teoscar Hernandez plays right field on artificial turf, he takes sunflower seeds and he marks his spot with the seeds on the turf, because in the grass you can just kind of scrape your cleats and you're going to make a mark, but you can't do that on artificial turf. So I learned that he does that. I haven't used that yet. I probably use that when we're in Arizona. So just different things that you can learn. And the other thing that baseball has done that has nothing to do with technology is they've loosened up the rules on what you can wear as a player.
Yeah.
There was always a big poster in the clubhouse that said what the uniform code was. Your shoes had to match, your, anything like wristbands, whatever, they had to match your main team color. Now they don't. And the young players love the flash that some of these guys have. Like, here you are, the buttoned up Los Angeles Dodgers, white, blue, right? And we got guys wearing hot pink and bright yellow spikes out there that clash. But they do it to show their personalities. I think there's a lot of young players that like to see that stuff. Me personally, I like it when the uniforms match, but I understand what they're doing. It helps to market the game. It creates other branding opportunities for players. And one of our players told me he travels with 4 different colors of spikes on the road. But I think the young people like that, and that's okay. And it makes it easier for them to find their favorite player, because all you can do is look on the field, and whoever has the bright green spikes, you know who they are.
There he is. Yeah. Oh, he's over in left field today. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's amazing. I've got to wonder though sometimes too, in preparation for a game, and this is a silly question kind of, but I think of it as a kid when I watch these movies and you'd see somebody for the opera getting ready and they'd be backstage and they'd have a little mist of aerosol they're spraying to get their voice a certain way, or an actor before they take the stage, they're doing tongue twisters or they're doing the scales up and down. Before you sit in front of that mic and you turn it on, are there any special things you do, or maybe just regularly, to take care of your voice? That's your instrument.
Not really. Just make sure you have enough water. right? And I don't drink. This sounds kind of prima donna-ish, but there's a reason for it. There's two reasons for it. Sometimes, like when you do TV, people come in. You have a stage manager. They ask, "Do you need anything? Can I get you anything?" Radio, they don't care. But TV, they'll come in. They'll say, yeah, "I'll say water," and I'll ask for room temperature water. And I'm not doing it to be high maintenance. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, if you have the cold water, it can tighten you up a little bit depending on how cold it is. So you want room temperature water. The other reason is you're outdoors in the summer, it's warm. That bottle that's a cold bottle of water is going to be condensation all over it. It's going to drip down. It's going to get all over your papers. It's going to wet your scorebook or wet your notes or whatever. And that's one thing I learned a long time ago is if you have a bottle of water, make sure it's room temperature so that it doesn't leak all over your stuff, which makes, could ruin your scorebook. So those are the two reasons, but I'll try to drink as much water as you can. That's about it. And there's a lot of people that like to stand because you got to breathe from your diaphragm and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I just kind of sit down, and when the game starts, I start talking, and we can go from there.
Well, Tim, I'm going to take us on a little trip. We're going to the broadcasting field of dreams. You're sitting in a broadcast booth up there, and you're looking out in the ball field, and you're seeing all these players come to the cornfields from whether it be from now or from the past or what, a mix. And then you turn and you look to your partner who's there in the booth with you, and it could be anybody from all time, past, present, maybe somebody from the future. Who is that person?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, I'd like to see one of my sons in there.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. But I mean, I think the obvious for me is with the Dodgers is Vin.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate where I've been able to sit in the booth with him, not during a game, but to be able to sit in the booth with him prior to a game and talk and exchange notes and things like that. I've had that privilege and honor to do that, and I've got absolutely wonderful memories of that, and how well he treated me. Means and meant the world to me.
Yeah.
There's no currency that can buy what he made me feel, how he made me feel. But I would love to have been able to sit in there with the headphones on and just listen for a whole game, and just watch how he went about it. And I've actually been in the booth watching him fill out his scorebook, and I didn't know the first time I did that. I didn't know he was left-handed until I happened to catch it that he was filling it out with his left hand. And I was with the Pirates at that time, and he said to me, the Pirates were trying all kinds of new things, and it never worked. But he said, "Can you tell me," it's a bad imitation, I'm sorry. He said, "Can you tell me why your pitcher is hitting eighth?" I said, "No, then I can't."
Oh, wow.
I said, "I wish I knew." But he left me a voicemail shortly before he passed that I kept. I have 3 voicemails that I've saved. One is from each of my parents, so if I ever need to hear their voices, I can go back and listen. And the other one is from Ben. It is something that I haven't let a lot of people hear, but it's wonderful. He had some incredibly nice things to say, and the fact that he said them, I cherish that voicemail as much as I cherish, anything I've got, any of my possessions. It's, for me in my business to have that and to hear him say it to me and have it recorded, just happened to be a voicemail. It was funny because I was driving through the desert from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and I'm on the phone with my wife, and we were talking about something, and I hear beep, beep. I didn't see whose number it was. And I said, somebody's calling. I said, whoever that is, I'll call him back. And so we hang up, and I'm still in the Mojave Desert, and I'm driving along, and I hit play on the voicemail through my car speakers, and I hear, "Hello, Tim, this is Vin Scully." And I went, oh my God, I almost had to pull over.
Oh my gosh.
I'm driving 80 miles an hour. I'm going, I can't believe that. So, but he went on and said some really nice things, and I was very appreciative of that. And I'll always have that, and I'm going to pass it on to make sure my kids keep it too.
Yeah, I can't imagine much richer treasure than that as a broadcaster and somebody, who meant a lot to everybody in the game
Mm.
and certainly with you all. When you were talking earlier about being on top of that school bus, I had this flash of a story in my mind. I can't remember all of it, but I think it was Red Barbers, and I think it was Vin Scully trying to begin his career. And he had to stand Red had him standing on a roof somewhere, I believe. I see both of you on the passion of the game goes beyond sometimes it's like, does this really make sense to do this?
Yeah.
But the passion is there. I am so glad you have that from him, man. That is such a rich piece of personal thing to have with you. That's great.
Yeah, it's neat. I think the story you're talking about, or might be, uh, when Vin was really young, Red Barber sent him over to Boston to do a college football game. It was between Boston University and Maryland.
Yep.
And at the old Fenway Park was where the game was going to be. And they didn't have the booths that they have there today. So he had to do it on a roof. And this was a game for, I don't know, Mutual Radio or it was national broadcast. And Vin was really young. And Vin had forgotten his coat back at the hotel. And it was really cold that day. And so he's on the roof of Fenway Park with the wind whipping off the Charles River in Boston. And he's got no coat on. And he said that the thing that impressed Red Barber the most was that during the broadcast, you would have never known that Vin was freezing. And he never mentioned it, never complained about it. He just did the broadcast. He did what he was supposed to do, and then, worried about it later. And he said that's what Red Barber really was impressed with. And that from that point forward, Vin was always going to be a fixture with Red in the booth with the Dodgers in Brooklyn.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that again, I think it shows the passion of the game and being able to stand up there in that code and be able to be a professional. That's really sets the mark for a lot of people.
Yeah, sometimes it's not easy to do. Sometimes you find yourself in different environments where they're not very comfortable, but you know what? The people listening at home, they don't care.
Yeah,
they don't. That. They don't. And you have to understand that nobody cares if you're uncomfortable. Nobody cares if you're sick, right? Nobody cares if you, I've done games where I've thrown up in between innings. Nobody cares, right? So you just go and do it, and you do your thing, and you worry about it later. You're there to do a job, and you do the job. And no matter if it's at midnight or if it's at 5 a.m, whenever it is, you have to do it. And that's what you sign up for when you're a broadcaster. We sat around for 3 hours and 6 minutes the other night before we played a game. The first pitch was at 10:21 p.m. in Atlanta. It's like people say, "Oh, isn't that terrible?" I'm like, no, it's part of the game. It's like, so what? Hey, we got the game in. That's great. That's what we wanted. If we had to wait a little extra, so what? Rain delays are part of the game. We're spoiled in Los Angeles. We don't even keep the tarp on the field there because we don't have to. And we don't have rain delays regularly. But I've worked out east. I've been in markets where, Boston, we had rain delays all the time. Especially when we played the Baltimore Orioles. It seemed like every time we went to Baltimore, we had a rain delay or a rain out or something. So it's just a part of baseball. It's part of the charm of the game. And you just deal with all that stuff. We didn't get off the air. I think we passed midnight the other night. It was like the bottom of the third inning. We didn't get back to the hotel till 2:30 in the morning. I remember game 3 of the World Series in 2018. The game lasted 7 hours and 20 minutes. I didn't get back to the hotel till 4 in the morning. And you know what? You don't complain about it. It's like, so what? That's what you do. It's what you remember. If that game was 3 hours and 2 minutes, I wouldn't remember that, but I remember that it was 7:20. And I remember what happened. Max Muncy had a walk-off winner in the bottom of the 18th inning. And I remember the details of that because of the oddities of the game and the length of the game and, different things that surround it. I remember in 2009, we had what I call the dryout in D.C. We had a game in Washington. It was a 12 noon game. It was a getaway day, and I remember going down to the hotel lobby, getting ready to go to the ballpark, and our traveling secretary came up to me and he said, "Game's canceled." And I looked out the door of the hotel, the old Mayflower Hotel there in D.C., and I said, "It's blue skies out there." He goes, "I know." He goes, "They say it's going to rain though." And we went to the ballpark. We had to wait for our plane like 3 or 4 hours because the plane wasn't in town yet. And we went over there, sat around for a while. Never got cloudy, never mind rain. And so we had to come back for a doubleheader in July. But it's the oddities of the game you remember,
Yeah.
and that's just one little thing that makes the game great.
Wow. Matt left me with a few questions, rapid fire. So, just ask and answer and don't give too much thought to it. And all righty, we'll go ahead with these. Let's see. Favorite stadium to call a game from other than Dodger Stadium?
Uh, Probably PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Ooh. Okay. Hardest name you've ever had to pronounce on air?
Let's see. I'm thinking Mark Zipchinski. Anybody else? That might be the hardest one. That's definitely a high point Scrabble name, Mark Zipchinski. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. One item that you never go into the booth without in the booth. One item you never go into the booth without.
Oh, my scorebook for sure. There's about 4, 5, 6 items, but my scorebook for sure. I always keep score. There are a lot of guys that do it digitally. There are guys that just take the paper that's provided for you by the team. I don't like that at all, but I like to keep a book so I have a history of the season. Got to have the scorebook.
Gotcha. All right. Here's one. How many pitching physical therapists do Dodgers employ?
I don't know. Good question. Officially or unofficially? That is a good question, and I don't know the number.
That's fun. It's just, let's see what else. Oh, should Maury Wills and Steve Garvey be in Hall of Fame?
I think if you ask any Dodger fan, the answer would be yes, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I mean, those two guys when they were playing, they're amazing, both of them. And we see Steve around the ballpark every now and then now still, but yeah, I think they probably should be.
He was actually born here in Tampa. I didn't realize that. I don't know how much he may have played as a child or not, but
yeah, he actually lived on the East Coast, and he was a bat boy. Steve was a bat boy for the Dodgers in Vero Beach spring training.
Oh wow,
years and years ago. He tells that story. It's remarkable how he ended up playing for them.
All righty, let's see, Tim. Matt gave me a closing question, and it is: if you could leave one lasting impression on the fans who hear your broadcast, what would you want it to be?
That I did a good job, that they enjoyed the game, that I got the score right, that was accurate with what I did, and that they were entertained and informed.
Is there anything specific you'd like to make sure you share with the audience?
No, not really. I just, I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the inside of the craft that we have, and I think that a lot of people who don't know that much about broadcasting, it's always interesting to talk with them or to interact with them so they can get a better idea about what it is we do.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to a city and I've got a friend there from college or whatever, and they'll say, "Hey, let's have dinner before the game." And they think you show up like right before the first pitch. No, I mean, I say I can't. Well, why not? Game's not till 7. I'll meet you at 5:30. I'm like, 5:30? No, that's the end of batting practice. I mean, I can't. So, I mean, I'm at the park at like 2:30 in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game, and people don't understand that. They don't know what we do to get ready. They just flip on the TV or flip on the radio, and they just expect perfection right away. It doesn't just happen. You have to work at it, and that's what we do. But I do enjoy those conversations and helping people understand what it is that we do and interacting with people that listen and watch.
Well, I appreciate it all. And Tim, it's always a pleasure to listen to you and the Dodgers. I'm curious to see how things go with Teoscar. I heard he got injured the other day. And yeah, I'm glad to see, was it Hae-Sung Kim coming to the team. So there's always something changing, something always new you had to prepare for, I'm sure, every game.
Yeah, we just got a note. They just made a roster move pitching wise, so I've got to go look at that. They'll probably make another one tomorrow for a starter
Yeah.
For our game tomorrow. So that's one of the things we look for during the day too. Is what's going to happen with the active roster. I'm guessing that Kim's going to start tonight. I know Mookie Betts has the night off. At least that was the plan as of yesterday. Excuse me, but with Teoscar getting injured, we don't know what that's going to be yet. Whether this is just a couple of days down or one day down, or if he's okay. I don't know. I saw him walking out last night. He didn't walk with a limp or anything, so that was good. But things change every day in baseball, and you got to be on top of it. You got to understand the reasons why that the rosters move around the way they do. For me, I'll get to work. I'll get on the bus. I'll get to the park and continue working. And I've got my routine that I do every day, and it helps me get prepared for the game so that when Rick throws it to me at the top of the game, I'm ready to go. And
All right, brother.
My job is to get ready to go every day.
Well, give our good wishes to your buddy there, Rick Mundy, and thank you again, Tim. You've been listening with Tim Neverett for the Dodgers announcer, and on behalf of Matt Germain and myself, I want to thank you, buddy, and continued success to both you and your family in sports and broadcasting, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mark.
You have been listening to Baseball Biz on Deck with special guest Tim Neverett, broadcaster for the Los Angeles Dodgers, sharing his stories from the booth. Just a reminder, if you enjoyed this show, go ahead, like, and subscribe to Baseball Biz on Deck. Also, you can find Matt at matgermain.bskysocial. That's Matt at matgermain.bskysocial, or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bskysocial. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck at iHeart Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward,